Clearing the mountain wasn't difficult, considering the power of the mechs. Most of them were able to take out 2 or 3 of the monsters before sustaining quite a bit of damage, since they weren't that proficient in dodging their attacks. Since the pilots were low level, it's hard to guess where the attack might come from. There were a few who were able to dodge, but that's mostly thanks to guessing the direction from the way the monsters moved their bodies. But this method was like a coin flip. Within the pilots, there was a small portion that could just keep attacking, without letting the monster touch them, and Glenn was included in this. Overall, Shiro couldn't help but pity the monsters a little. They should be a symbol of fear, but instead, an army of mechs charged into their home and killed everyone. Looking at the mech reports, Shiro could see that everyone's levels were shooting up, which meant that she could start introducing the second generation standard units that were meant for those with better physiques. With the weapons that she could create, they'll be unstoppable within the realm of Tier 5. However, I need to start developing weapons for killing things in Tier 6. While I'm good at experimenting, I have to say I'm not as good as the scientists. Back in Aria. Perhaps I should set up a research guild and pass them the information about nanobots. No, that's a bit dangerous. I'll have them research into weapons then. Even if it's conceptual, as long as the numbers work out, I can make it with my nanobots. Even if they know the blueprint, they won't be able to recreate it. Shiro mused to herself as she decided to make a weapon research facility. Even if the weapon was conceptual, as long as the theory is on point, she'll be able to make it. You'll also need to give them some information about those in Tier 6 so that the weapon could actually damage them. Hell, I'd be surprised if the weapon could actually hit them, since they could dodge the bullets with ease. Nimue reminded. Don't worry, I know. Shiro smiled. Sending out a notification for everyone to return, she controlled the AI for 2 specific pilots that had demonstrated great skill during this excursion. The first was Glenn. He showed remarkable mech control as well as an understanding of redistributing the force through the mech to enhance the impact of each hit. The second was a girl called Celeste. Looking at her records, Shiro could see a red-haired woman that always seemed to have an angry expression. Her performance on the battlefield was rather wild, as the humanoid mech almost seemed like a beast under her control. Her fighting style was extremely close quarters and brutal, opting to use her bare hands to break a monster's jaw and killing them by crushing their bodies. Shiro loved it, since it reminded her a little of her own fighting style when it came down to it. Looking at her other records, a smile crept up on Shiro's face, since her training in the army was also impressive. Sending a notification to the 2, she had them make their way to her office in the military. Dismissing the blade of my mech, I took a deep breath and looked at my surroundings. Quite a few corpses had already started to dissolve, since the stomach acids of these monsters were ridiculously strong. Without magic protecting them, they would eat themselves from the inside out. Just as I was about to make my way to the next area, the mini-goddess hologram flickered for a moment. The excursion has ended. All units are to return to the city. Private Glenn, this message is for your ears only. I want to see you in my office when you return. Pausing in surprise, I looked at the hologram and realized that there was an awe-inspiring aura that wasn't there before. I'm sure you are a little confused, but don't worry. You're not in trouble. I just wish to discuss your future role in the army due to your performance. She chuckled. Snapping her fingers, I realized that all of the internal damage and fatigue that had built up over this fight was healed in an instant. Understood, I replied, controlling the mech to make its way back to the base. Good. Flickering again, the hologram returned to normal. Taking a deep breath, I couldn't help but feel a little excited that the goddess had actually noticed me. Unable to wipe the smile off my face, I hurried back to base. I was raised by a monster out in the wild. He knew human tongue and taught it to me. He taught me how to fight and how to survive by using mana. His name was Kaiser, but I called him Dad. At first, he seemed to be raising me up to eat me, but he didn't. Though even if he wanted to eat me, I didn't mind. He was the one who raised me while my parents abandoned me. But Dad said that he was going to die soon, and that I should go to a human city to see what life is like there. He said that it was a selfish dream of his to want to feel like how a human parent would, and prevented me from living like a normal person. He spoke of strong people in the world that I could look up. With power, one didn't have to live in fear, nor would they need to be restrained, but I didn't want to go. A few years passed, and he died since he couldn't level up to the next tier. His final words were for me to go to a human city and live a proper life. I followed his will, but the way people looked at me was disgusting. It was like I was nothing but trash by the roadside. Those that wanted to take advantage of me were killed. Kaiser taught me that since I was a woman, there was trash in the world who would use my body even if I said no. That's why I needed power to protect myself and live freely. So I killed. I killed, using the methods that Kaiser taught me. Then the world changed. Large monsters bigger than Kaiser appeared and they killed everything in sight. I wanted to run, since my instincts told me that I would be killed if I stayed, but I couldn't run fast enough. I was bitten in half and killed. However, I didn't die. A beautiful woman appeared and revived me. She asked me to run, and her kindness reminded me of Kaiser, who looked after me. I watched huge metal things descend from the sky and kill the monsters with ease. Monsters that Kaiser would struggle with could be crushed with such ease. But the truth was before me. Listening to the goddess, I ran and was taken to this giant city. There was a giant screen that showed the goddess saving everyone. That kindness she showed was something I should admire. At least that's what Kaiser taught me, and I understood why. It was warm. She let me live in the city without one wanting to harm me. Even the demons that Kaiser talked about were nice here. I was given a home and a small robot to help me when I needed, but it didn't feel right. I didn't work for this kindness, so when I saw that I could join the thing called an army and pilot one of those metal things, I registered immediately. I don't need the things called guns, since I like to fight with my hands. So I broke one and tied some of the pieces to make the claws that are similar to the ones that Kaiser had. I got some training and piloted the mechs, but it felt weird. It didn't suit me, so I asked the mini-goddess if I could make some changes. I made it so that I could use claws in the mech, and fighting became easier. The monsters that dwarfed me and Kaiser were killed with ease, and I finally felt good. I felt that all the things the goddess gave me were finally earned, but there was still something missing. She saved my life, and Kaiser taught me that saving a life is one of the greatest things that people can do. And if I was to have my life, I should repay the one who saved me, but I didn't know what I could do. Then the mini-goddess talked to me. "Private Celeste, this message is for your ears only. I want to see you in my office when you return." She smiled. "Don't worry, it's nothing bad," she chuckled. "Okay." I nodded. I wondered what the goddess wanted from me. Whatever it was, it might help me repay her for saving my life. When I arrived at the office, I saw that there was another person besides me, a boy who seemed determined. He had the same look as I did. We both wanted to repay the goddess. Maybe we can become the thing that Kaiser called friends. Looking at the two soldiers standing in front of her, Shiro raised an eyebrow after seeing Celeste's curious glances at Glenn. "Now, I've called you two here because I was very impressed with your performance during the excursion. I'm thinking of giving each of you a specialized unit designed for your personal use, as well as training with powerful instructors to help you improve. Naturally, this also includes the rewards from the excursion too, so you can both get a weapon or armor from Helion as well as a bracelet with a skill that you want." Shiro smiled as she sat on the table with her legs crossed. Surprised at Shiro's attitude despite being a goddess, Glenn coughed lightly. "Thank you very much. But I don't think I'm suited for a specialized unit since I can't use magic that well." Glenn spoke up. "You don't have to know magic for a specialized unit, you know. It's called a specialized unit because it is tailored to your specialties. If you're used to just using swords, then your specialized unit would be one that takes advantage of all of this. Of course, I'll need to collect more data on your fighting style in order to make one that's perfectly suited for you." Shiro chuckled. "Oh, I see. Who would be my trainer then?" Glenn asked. "If he can get stronger, he can help people like how she did. It depends on what kind of training you want. If you want sword training, I'd suggest my father, my mother, or Lyrica Wallenstein and her mother. If you want magic training, I'd suggest Arim of the Mages Guild." Shiro smiled while resting her chin on her palm. Thinking about it for a moment, Glenn swallowed nervously as he looked at her with determination. "What about training with you as the mentor?" he asked. In the Mana realm, Nimue, Izuel, and Estrella all face-palmed at the same time in shock. One does not simply ask Shiro for training and get away with it. Hearing this, Shiro's lips curved into a grin as she narrowed her eyes at him. "You want training from me? You understand that my training is everything, right?" Shiro asked, as Glenn nodded his head. Noticing some strange movements to his left, he glanced over and saw Celeste with her face completely pale and was shivering. "Sure, I'll give you training, but I'll give you one last chance to back out. Since if you accept, even if you say no, I'll be dragging you to the training hall personally." Shiro chuckled. She had nothing to do anyways. Nodding his head, Glenn agreed, not knowing what he had just got himself into. "All right, sure, I'll give you a schedule in a bit." Shiro nodded before turning to Celeste. "What about you?" Shiro asked. Swallowing nervously, Celeste didn't know what to say. Seeing Shiro's expression earlier reminded her of a high-level monster looking at prey. But that expression disappeared quickly, so she wasn't sure if it was an illusion or not. But deep down, she felt a little afraid of the kind goddess. What? Would let me repay you for saving my life?" Celeste asked as Shiro blinked her eyes. "So you want to repay me for saving your life? You don't have to, you know. You can just stay in the city and be happy." Shiro raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't feel earned. I want to repay the debt of you saving my life. Kaiser taught me that one. Should repay the person who saved your life." Hearing this, Shiro smiled. This Kaiser sounds like an adoptive parent, but he's raised her well. Shiro thought with a smile. "Well, if you're insistent, why don't you become something similar to a royal guard then? That's essentially what all the specialized pilots are, royal guards who serve me and follow my orders. Of course, if I require you to protect me, I'll ask for it when the time comes." Shiro smiled as Celeste nodded her head. "Rangovez. Then why don't you train under me with Glenn? Both of you are going to become specialized pilots with you wanting to pay back your debt," Shiro suggested, with a smile. "Yeesh, look at your smile, you look like a scammer." Nimue rolled her eyes as Shiro shrugged. "What scammer?" "I'm just offering them a chance of training under me." Shiro replied with a smug smile. "Don't break them like you did Auntie Sylvia, Mommy." Atty called out as Shiro choked on her saliva. "Cuff! Where did you learn about that, darling?" Shiro forced and smiled as Atty pointed at Nimue, who was slipping away into the Mana Sea. Grabbing Nimue by the shoulder, Shiro smiled. "May I ask about what you're teaching to my son?" "Imwufu, just knowledge about his mother's previous ventures." Nimue smiled before escaping her grasp by turning her body to water. However, she didn't get far as a layer of ice covered her body. "Look after your auntie, okay?" Shiro smiled as Atty nodded his head. Turning her focus back to reality, Shiro brought up their schedules. "This should be your schedules, all right?" Shiro asked, handing them 2 pieces of paper. "Yes, it is." Glenn nodded. Seeing that Celeste also nodded, Shiro started to make some adjustments. Sparring, magic training, mech training, weapons training, battle knowledge, and healing knowledge. They might not know about healing spells, but doing some first aid is a must. Shiro thought to herself as she started to fill their schedules in. "What about rest?" Nimue asked as she was still locked in the ice. "What rest?" Shiro raised an eyebrow and handed the sheet back. "This will be your schedule for the next few weeks, and I'll improve it depending on what I see, okay? You'll get your specialized units once I finish observing you." Shiro smiled. Taking the sheet, the 2 of them nodded their head and walked out of the office. Just as they walked out, they noticed Sheena and saluted. "Oh, are you 2 the top contributors in the excursion? Congratulations," she smiled. "Thank you very much." Glenn nodded his head. "So what reward did you ask for?" Sheena asked curiously, since she was interested in the creativity of the soldier, since the last one who got their rewards actually made such a strong, berserk skill. "We asked for personal training from the goddess." Hearing this, Sheena stumbled on her foot as she almost fell off the railings. "You what now?" she asked in shock. Confused by her question, Glenn repeated his answer. "So you're telling me you asked for training from Her Highness, and she smiled happily?" Sheena asked, while furrowing her brows. She's already given us a schedule." Glenn smiled, showing Sheena his timetable for the next few weeks. Reading it, Sheena flinched and looked at him with pity. "Do you know that you only have 2 hours?" Sheena sighed. "2 hours of what?" Glenn tilted his head as Celeste did the same. Placing her hands on their shoulders, Sheena sighed heavily. "You only have 2 hours of rest in a week. A tip from me as your senior, who has also experienced the same training. Learn how to sleepwalk. At least you'll be able to sleep when you walk towards the next lesson. Also, if you outperform her, schedule. She'll compact it more to increase the intensity. Good luck," Sheena said as she walked towards the office. Looking at her back, Glenn was confused. "What? Sleepwalk to the next lesson. It shouldn't be that bad, right?" He thought to himself. Looking at the schedule, his body tensed up as he saw how many sessions were crammed into a single day. Even his time for food was barely enough for a small meal before resuming lessons. "It doesn't look that bad, I think," Celeste muttered while looking at the paper. "I hope so too," Glenn muttered with a hollow laugh. With this kind of schedule, his sister might as well forget about meeting him for the next few weeks. It didn't even take a week before both Celeste and Glenn were running away from Shiro. Shivering in the closet, Celeste tried to keep as quiet as possible since training was hell. "You know, everything here is made by me, so it's only natural that I know where you are. Why are you late, Celeste?" Shiro's voice rang out as Celeste looked up to see a holographic Shiro with her trademark demon smile. Paling from her smile, Celeste nodded her head obediently. "I'll rush to the training hall now," she replied in a low voice. "Good, I had to drag Glenn out from his hiding spot too. Maybe I'll increase the sparring lesson today since you two seem rather energetic, hiding from me like this." Shiro laughed, as Celeste was crying in her mind. "Kaiser, help me! The goddess is a demon in disguise. She's scary!" Celeste shouted out in her mind as she forced herself to make her way back to the training hall. Hours passed without sleep. 71. In training, the two wasn't too difficult while they were traveling to the north. Their faults were quite obvious for Shiro, and it was just a case of telling it to them while demonstrating in a spar. Celeste was too honest in her fighting style. There were no feints at all, and if she charged, she'd commit to that charge until the end. While her power is good, it's like fighting a train. You know where the rails are. All you had to do was step out of her path. During the first few spars, Celeste was confused as to why she couldn't even come close to hitting Shiro, so she tried to use feints, but she used too much strength and tired herself out before even committing. Shiro had to spend some extra time teaching her about balancing the two in a fight. As for Glenn, he was better when it came to combat, but was just as bad when it came to feints. He didn't know how to do feints, nor could he react well to them. But worse of all, he didn't have any counter to magic. If magic was used in a one-on-one against him, there's a 100% that he'll fall into the passive immediately and forget about how to counterattack. Overall, both had the same problems, with Celeste being too straightforward and Glenn being completely countered by magic. "I've told you many times that you can't be obvious with your feints. Every time you do a feint, your left leg shifts back and your eyes dart around for a moment." Shiro sighed as she summoned a stick and bonked Celeste on the head as she was, passing her. "And you, Glenn, think about what you can do to help your teammate already." Shiro glanced at Glenn, who was being pushed back by 3 simple orbs of mana. He was able to parry the magic thanks to the sword that Hellion made him, but he didn't know what to do afterwards. Honestly, if Celeste went over to help him, she could have covered up for his weaknesses. Shiro thought with a shake of her head. I doubt the girl will think of that when she hasn't slept for 4 days. Nimue raised an eyebrow. Well, she better think of it soon. There have been times where I've been trapped in enemy territory and had to stay awake for more than a week. Even when you're exhausted, you have to push yourself and keep your wits sharp so that you can survive. Plus, aren't I staying up with them despite me being exhausted myself? Shiro shrugged. That's true, but you're abnormal, and they're not. Well, that makes things easier. Just become abnormal, Shiro replied. Stomping her foot down, the ground collapsed beneath the two of them as they fell down. Panting heavily, Shiro could see bags under their eyes as they were truly tired. Rejoice, you two. The time of rest has arrived. Your 2 hours break stats now. Shiro smiled as the two of them immediately fell asleep in the holes. Shaking her head, Shiro made 2 beds and set them both on it. Well, I guess it's my time to shine now. Shiro stretched her body. She had forced them to fight continuously for days on end to see how far they could push their body, as well as their willpower. And she must say, she's impressed. Putting on some gloves, Shiro started to hasten their recovery. While this was happening, Shiro also refined their body by pushing her mana through their body. Normally, this would have been an extremely painful process since they had their own mana, and forcefully cleansing it, like this, was akin to pouring hot metal down their throat. But now that they're completely exhausted, all of their mana paths have relaxed, allowing her mana to flow through without problem. Celeste was highly adaptive, and her mana is wild, so she needed to be on the brink of collapsing while Glenn just didn't use his mana at all, so Shiro had to weaken him in order to open up his pathways. While he can't cast magic, opening the pathways allows his body to be tempered by mana. While she was refining their bodies, Shiro noticed that Glenn's physique, in terms of the mana pathway, was similar to a compression chamber. If he knows how to manipulate his mana, even without casting spells, he'll be able to demonstrate explosive power in a single instant. I'll need to change the blueprint for his specialized mech in order to accommodate this then, Shiro thought, with a smile. As for Celeste, she had something akin to an innate berserk skill where she could cause her mana to rampage within her body. Without the proper physique, this would destroy her, but countless uses of this has allowed her to live without any problems. Ranoes, but it was too inefficient. Spending a bit more time refining Celeste's body, Shiro imprinted several magic circles around her pathways so that it wouldn't harm her body when she goes berserk. Instead, this energy would be more controlled while retaining all of that power. If anything, it's similar to Madison's berserk skill that has no backlash, Shiro thought with a smile. Once she had refined both of their bodies, she felt lightheaded. As she fell back and sat on the floor, panting for a moment, Shiro evened out her breathing before making a sofa for herself to rest for a bit. Closing her eyes, she also fell asleep immediately. After 2 hours had passed, both Celeste and Glenn snapped their eyes open as they yawned lightly and woke up. Realizing that they were on a bed, they looked at each other in confusion before spotting Shiro sleeping on a sofa with a peaceful expression. Just as they stood up, they noticed that their bodies no longer hurt, but instead felt more energetic than ever. Before they could wake up Shiro, a blue-haired woman appeared in front of them. Don't wake her up now. Her soul has been injured, yet she still stayed up with you lot to train you. Honestly, she should have passed out on the first day. To top it all off, she pushed herself at the end so that you two could have your body refined, the woman whispered while looking down at Shiro. Follow me. I'll train you for a bit while Shiro's sleeping. I might not be as good as her, but I can take care of 2 brats like you. She chuckled. Looking at each other, Glenn and Celeste nodded their heads and followed Nimue out to another training hall. Clap! Right then, let me introduce myself. My name is Nimue, and I'll be your instructor for a short while. I don't have all of the practical knowledge that Shiro has, but I'm confident of holding my own in a fight. You two are to spar with me while I explain what happened with your physiques. Nimue smiled as the entire room instantly became humid. Feeling the aura emanating from Nimue, both Celeste and Glenn knew that she shouldn't be looked down upon. Nodding at each other, they charged at her, but Nimue only shook her head. Snapping her finger, a wall of water appeared between them as they were cut out from each other. Swiping her hand, a torrent of water slammed into Glenn's body, forcing him against the wall. A defenseless charge is suicidal. I'm sure Shiro has taught you this, yet you still commit the same mistake. Honestly, Shiro's been a little soft on you since her body is weak. So in her place, I'll show you what her training should have been like. Nimue narrowed her eyes as a crushing pressure descended on the two of them. Celeste tensed up mid-attack as she backed off immediately. What's wrong, girl? I thought you were going to attack me like all the other times. Come on, unless you understand that what you've been doing has been a mistake. Nimue glared at Celeste. Suddenly, a wave of water slammed against her back as she could feel her ribs crack. Coughing up some blood, Celeste made some distance between the two of them. Leaving your back defenseless is also suicidal. Try again. Nimue scoffed as a green aura appeared on Celeste's body. Realizing that she was healed, Celeste looked down in confusion, but this didn't last long when a pillar of water exploded up, fracturing her jaw and slamming her body into the ceiling. What are you dawdling for? Just because you're healed, you think you're safe? Try again. Nimue frowned, healing her body again. And you, Glenn, why haven't you helped your teammate yet? In a battlefield, are you going to watch her die like this? Nimue asked, as Glenn was being occupied by a few orbs of water. But, don't give me shitty excuses. Give me one and I'll shatter your manhood. Instead of using your brain to think of excuses, think about how you can help your teammate. Shiro has refined your body, so even if you can't cast spells, you can use mana. Your physique is tailored to explosive power, so use it. Nimue lectured while blocking Celeste's attack. You have willpower, but that's it. You two better not waste Shiro's effort. Nimue said as the attacks increased in intensity. Stretching her body, Shiro yawned as she glanced at the time. Imset, it's only been an hour. There's another 2 hours to go, she muttered. Looking around the room, she found it a little strange that neither Glenn nor Celeste was in the bed. Hey, shouldn't they be sleeping right now? Furrowing her brows, Shiro stood up and massaged her neck. For an hour's worth of sleep, she felt strangely refreshed. Noticing a few spikes of mana in a nearby training hall, Shiro realized that it was Nimue, Glenn, and Celeste. They only have 2 hours worth of rest. Why is she sparing with them? I thought she's the one who wanted me to give them more rest, Shiro muttered. Walking over to the training hall, she opened the door. Bang! Just as she did this, Celeste was slammed into the wall as she coughed up a mouthful of blood. Again! I thought I told you to not charge in defenseless. A shoddy defense is no different from no defense. Nimue's voice boomed out as there was a whirlpool centered around Nimue in the middle of the training hall. While this was happening, she was holding Glenn up by the shirt and slammed him into the ground. Widening her eyes, Shiro was taken aback. Understood! Celeste shouted out after being healed. There was blood all over her body, but she was constantly being healed. Slamming both hands down, a red aura exploded out of her body as it seemed to mimic the look of a monster. Gritting her teeth, Celeste charged at Nimue in her berserk state. Flicking her wrist, a tidal wave exploded forth in an attempt to bury her under the water. Ura! Crying out in anger, black and red energy wrapped around her claws as she ripped the tidal wave apart with her mana. Just as this happened, another torrent of water appeared as it threatened to hit her in the face. Kish! Before that could happen, Glenn managed to intercept the wave with his blade. Gritting his teeth, mana erupted out of his body as he slashed horizontally with his blade. Krrr! Noticing faint slash marks on the walls of the training hall, Shiro was a little surprised, since this couldn't be damaged easily, otherwise she wouldn't have used this as a training hall. Iranobetsi, what's your follow-up? Are you satisfied with just stopping one attack out of many? Nimue shouted out as a pillar of water shot up from under them, slamming them into the ceiling. Gah! Crying out in pain, Glenn gritted his teeth and used the ceiling as a launch pad. Bang! Dashing towards Nimue, he readied his sword and slashed towards her vertically. Sidestepping the slash with ease, Nimue noticed Celeste running along the walls on all fours while looking for a chance to attack her. Are you just going to keep watching? If there is no opening, make one! Nimue lecture. Slamming her hand down, waves slammed into her body, pressing her against the wall. Crack! Flinching slightly, Shiro knew that she heard Celeste's bones break with that attack, but it was healed up quickly. Ouch! and here she was complaining about me going hard on them. Shiro sighed. Fine, I'll make an opening then, Glenn shouted out, grabbing his sword with both hands, his muscles tensed up as veins could be seen. Bang! His aura exploded forth as Shiro wanted to clap in appreciation. However, she didn't want to break their concentration. Do you think people will let you charge an attack like that? Slamming her hand down, a magic circle appeared beneath Glenn. But before it could activate, Celeste slammed both her hands down. Crack! Fracturing the floor as well as her fists, she managed to disrupt the magic circle. But this didn't stop Nimue from sending another attack. Snapping her fingers, 10 orbs of water appeared as streams of water shot towards Glenn. Dashing forward, Celeste tanked all of the attacks even if they damaged her heavily. Duck! Glenn shouted out. Crouching down immediately, Celeste watched as a thin wave of energy exploded in a circle as Nimue's waves were cut in half immediately. Turning a portion of her body into snow, Shiro raised an eyebrow at the attack since the damage was impressive, but it would never hit someone like Nimue, and as expected, with her body turning to water, the attack completely missed her. What now? Your front line is damaged, and that attack took almost everything you have. With no guarantee, you were provoked by me and wasted your energy. How will you fight now? Nimue asked, as she appeared next to the two of them. Before they could attack her, chains made from water wrapped around their body and pinned them to the ground. Did Shiro teach you about using big attacks without any guarantee? Nimue narrowed, her eyes as Glenn gritted his teeth. Now, don't be so harsh. For just an hour of training, they've been performing quite well. It's a huge improvement. Shiro interfered, since it was quite impressive that they've managed to improve this much. Huh? It's been 2 days. What the hell do you mean a single hour? Nimue raised an eyebrow as Shiro paused mid-step. Pardon? It's been 2 days? She asked, not sure if she heard it properly. Yes, it's been 2 days. You were so exhausted that you've been sleeping for 2 days. I've taken over your lessons for you in the meantime. Despite what you said, you're still a bit too soft on them. Nimue shook her head as she returned to the mana realm, shaking her. Head softly, Shiro crouched near the two and healed them with life fire. Are you all right? She asked softly, since the 2 days must have been like hell. Ooh. She's scary. I'm sorry I won't think that you're the devil anymore, Celeste cried, out as tears fell. Hugging Shiro like she's the last bastion of hope, Celeste refused to let go. Sighing softly, Shiro patted her head and tried to comfort her. Looking over at Glenn, Shiro could see that he was a little affected by what had just happened. Don't worry too much. A lot of it is experience. You'll get better at analyzing the battle the more you fight. That's what the theory lessons are for. Shiro comforted as Glenn nodded his head. Don't rush it. Most of our power has been built up over time. Nimue has watched me fight for almost a year. She's heard all of my thoughts during battle, so it's only natural that she'll pick up a thing or two. I'll practice more so I can proudly call myself your student. I can't bring shame to the goddess by losing so easily. Glenn nodded as he stood up. Seeing this, Shiro smiled, since his willpower was still burning brightly. Oi, Celeste, are you going to keep hugging the goddess like that? We need to practice so that we can beat Nimue next time. Glenn furrowed his brows as Celeste thought about it for a moment before glancing back at him. You practice. I want to hug the goddess. She's warm. Celeste pouted as Shiro laughed. Fine. You two can have a break. Sparring against Nimue must have been tough. Huh? Shiro patted Celeste's head, snapping her fingers. She made a small kitchen and cooked them a quick meal. For the next few days, training the two became easier since they focused on the lessons, fearing that Nimue would be their trainer again. Celeste became used to using feints and knew which attacks she should block for Glenn and which ones she should ignore. She is also able to control her energy better, so that her berserk state lasted longer. As for Glenn, he became more analytical on the battlefield, knowing when to attack and when to back off. He was patient and didn't rush no matter what he heard, and it reflected in his sword style. Overall, both have made vast improvements in their training. Funnily enough, they have also somewhat mastered the sleepwalk to the next lesson that Sheena had told them about. While they didn't sleep, they were able to rest as musky as possible while making their way to the training halls. Soon, there was only a week left till the relic appeared, and Shiro received a message from both Madison and Isilia. The system had given them a single map which showed their current location, and a path to where the relic will appear with the following message. In a week's time, the first rainbow relic will appear in this garden, wishing all queens good luck. Now that their path has been shown, Shiro immediately set course to the location, shown on the map. Unfortunately, her soul had not healed up fully. According to Mio, it would take her more than a week, maybe 2, to recover back to her full strength, so they'll need to be careful about the following fight. According to the map, it'll take us roughly 4 days to reach the location at our current pace. We haven't seen many survivors out in the wild, so I think we should increase our speed. Lyrica suggested, as they were currently having a meeting to discuss the new information that they had received. I agree. Plus, most of the survivors that we have found aren't worth our efforts. This has been the case for a while now. Madison nodded since she was disappointed that they couldn't help more good-natured people. While there is the chance that we could find good-natured people on the way there, the chance is quite low. I think we should just get there as soon as possible so that we can see which queens have arrived and what they are capable of. Isilia spoke up as a few others nodded their heads. As much as they wanted to help people, claiming a rainbow-grade item was more important. So are we at an agreement. Then, we'll get to the location as fast as possible and scout out the scene, Shiro asked as the entire party nodded their heads. All right, I think this is a battle that only tier 6s can enter, and even then, take care, since there will no doubt be queens and empresses. Last time me and Isilia met the Chimera Empress, we couldn't kill her even though she was severely weakened. That will give you a rough idea of their power. We're here to observe from the side, and if needs be, I'll be using my own rainbow-grade item to secure it for us. Shiro nodded. If you are planning to use the rainbow-grade item, which god are you planning to summon? Madison asked curiously, since she knew that Shiro had 2 items. One to summon a god at 70% of their strength. The other is to use their power at 100% strength. Honestly, it depends on the terrain, but the most effective one would be Kronos. He rules over time, so if it does get rough, I can freeze time and steal the item for myself. But that would be somewhat of a waste considering its power. If I was to use it at a different event, there is the chance that I can eliminate quite a few queens once I am fully recovered. Honestly though, I'm thinking of using Gaia or Nyx. If I use my sword to enter a one-on-one duel with the one who took the relic and kill them, Gaia's power can allow me to bury them underground and stop them from chasing me. While it might not delay them for long, it will give us enough time to leave using the city. As for Nyx's power, I can just blind everyone while empowering myself. Shiro shrugged. I'm pretty sure the god's powers are more than just that, but sure. Nimue yawned from inside the mana realm. True, but I can't exactly ask them how to use it, seeing as though I can't see the system. After discussing the plans for a little longer, Shiro increased the speed of the city so that they'll reach their destination in roughly 2 days. Arriving outside the training hall, Shiro could see Shaina, Oran, and Akes resting nearby since they had just finished their training for the day. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro was quite curious how Celeste and Glenn would perform against these 3. Shaina, Oran, Akes. Shiro called out as the 3 of them instantly stood up, seeing Shiro. Your Highness. They bowed as Shiro nodded her head. Are you 3 busy at all? Not at all. Do you require something from us? Shaina asked. Just a small favor. I want you 3 to have a quick spar with Glenn and Celeste, since I want to see how they perform with someone else. They're a bit too used to how I fight now. Injiro chuckled. Looking at each other, the 3 were a little concerned, since Glenn and Celeste must be exhausted after all the training. They would know since they had first-hand experience. Don't worry about their exhaustion. They're quite durable. Plus, if they're tired, I'll heal them up. Shiro chuckled as Shaina sighed and nodded her head. Great, follow me. Leading the 3 through the corridors, they arrived at the training hall where both Celeste and Glenn were training. Looking into the room, they were a little shocked. Renabezglen was currently standing in an array of magic circles that Arim had constructed. The magic circle was one that increased gravity for a select number of objects, and he had to either deflect or dodge bullets fired at him. If he was wounded, another magic circle made by Sylvia would heal him up immediately. As for Celeste, she was currently fighting 15 drones while maintaining her berserk state. Looking at the aggressiveness of the drones, even Sheena felt a little afraid to attempt it. Snapping her fingers, Shiro stopped everything as both of them collapsed on the ground and panted heavily. "We'll take a break here. After that, you're going to have a little sparring match with one of the three here, okay?" Shiro smiled as Glenn and Celeste nodded their head before falling asleep immediately. With rest being so rare, they need to be able to make the most of it and sleep as much as they can. Seeing this, all three were taken aback since even they weren't like this. If you're wondering, it's because they had a training session with Nimue. Surprisingly, she's harsher than me. Shiro laughed. "I see." Sheena nodded. "Perhaps you want to spar with Nimue while you wait," Shiro offered, as the three immediately shook their heads. They still had nightmares about a mini Shiro in a mech training them. They didn't need someone that was, apparently, harsher. Waiting for half an hour, Shiro clapped her hand as the two sleeping on the floor stood up looking a little refreshed. "All right. Sheena, do you want to pick someone to fight?" Shiro asked, as Sheena shrugged. "I don't mind either of them. If anything, I'll let them choose." Sheena replied. "What about you two?" And Shiro looked at Oren and Akes. "I don't mind either," Oren smiled. "Me too," Akes nodded. "In that case, I think Celeste will fight Sheena and Glenn will fight Akes," Shiro suggested. Separating the hall into two sections, she sent the two Toim groups into their own respective sides. "Right then, seems like I'll be sparing against you today," Sheena smiled, looking at Celeste. Narrowing her eyes at Sheena, Celeste nodded her head and crouched down onto all fours. So eager. Sheena chuckled as ice started to form around her. "Begin!" Hearing Shiro's voice from above, Celeste dashed forward as her red aura exploded out. Surprised by her speed, Sheena frowned and slammed her hand down. Immediately, the ground froze over as Celeste lost her footing. However, she recovered quickly. Claws of mana formed around her hands and legs as they dug into the ice and continued to run as if it was normal, jumping up. She was about to swipe at Sheena when two ice pillars shot up. Twisting her body, Celeste used the pillars as a launching platform to get closer to Sheena. Taking a step back, Sheena smiled as several projectiles launched towards Celeste. With two, aiming at her arms and one at her head, Celeste gritted her teeth and swiped with her hands. "Krrr!" Upon touching the projectiles, ice started to form around her body. Understanding that this was bad news, Celeste's mana roared out as sparks started to appear around her body. Suddenly, the sparks ignited as her body was coated with a veil of flames that made her seem like a beast from hell. Watching her ice melt instantly, Sheena was a little surprised. Raising her arms up, Celeste slammed them down as fire started to erupt out from the ground. Her body disappeared before reappearing, from inside one of the pillars. With Celeste being so close to her, Sheena had no choice but to quickly erect a wall between them, but it was melted instantly. Furrowing her brows, she muttered a small incantation as a blizzard exploded out, chilling the flames immediately. Fu, breathing out softly, Sheena clasped her two hands together. A Tier 4 magic circle appeared as snowflakes started to descend from the sky. Seeing her flames being suppressed, Celeste knew that this was a bad situation for her, and she needed to change the environment. From her back, mana started to gather as it formed two flaming arms. Aiming them towards Sheena, mana started to converge towards her as an orb of flames materialized. Surprisingly, she didn't fire the orb, but instead consumed it. The ice and snow immediately started to melt around her as the flames on her body increased in intensity. Did Shiro pick her because she's a fire user and I'm ice? Sheena wondered, but that was fine. Taking a deep breath, runes appeared around her body. True spirit nature, ice witch. A black dress wrapped around her body as her hair was dyed snow-white with hints of blue on the tips. The ice around Sheena intensified as she looked at Celeste with a small smile. Waving her hand, ice walls appeared around Celeste as her charge was halted. Even with her flames being empowered, the ice was barely melted. Snapping her fingers, the blizzard started to increase in intensity as Sheena's body faded away, not to be seen. With her opponent disappearing from sight, Celeste furrowed her brows as she could only look around in confusion. Gritting her teeth, she didn't know what to do, other than sending out attacks everywhere. However, the lack of response and the growing storm only seemed to annoy her more as the flaming aura started to flare with hints of purple. Don't get too angry now, Celeste. I believe this spar is your loss for now. Shiro called out with a smile as Celeste frowned. Glancing up, she came eye to eye with Shiro, who wasn't smiling anymore, and shrunk back. Dismissing her aura, she sat there obediently as the blizzard disappeared, revealing a somewhat tired Sheena. While the fight between Sheena and Celeste was happening, Glenn was holding his sword and narrowed his eyes at Akes. Right now, Akes had a dagger in hand and seemed rather relaxed. How do you want to do this? First hit, then give up, or are we going until Her Highness calls out the winner? Akes asked as he twirled the dagger around his fingers. Up to you, I don't mind, Glenn replied while sweat dripped down his face. Despite his relaxed state, Akes felt like an unsheathed sword that could attack at any moment. Well, it's no fun for the first strike. We'll wait for Her Highness to announce the winner then. Akes smiled, taking a step forward. Reaching top speed immediately, he closed the gap in an instant as Glenn widened his eyes. Quickly drawing his sword, he slashed horizontally as Akes reached out with his arm and allowed it to be cut. Watching. The blood spilled from his wounds. Glenn was confused for a moment, since he was expecting that strike to miss, so he didn't put too much force behind it. Now that his attack landed, he wasn't able to move into his next stance. As this happened, the blood suddenly solidified into the shape of a blade as Akes twisted his body. Sht! Cursing in his mind, Glenn quickly ducked down in a panic and narrowly dodged the blood blade before adjusting his stance. Cleaving up with his sword, he rolled back and quickly flipped himself back on his feet as his strike managed to cut Akes across the chest. However, the wound was shallow and healed up instantly. I'm not sure why Her Highness picked me to be against you, but melee matchups against me are at a disadvantage. Akes smiled. The blood that had soaked his coat started to twist as it formed into a bracelet on his wrist. Senior is quite confident. Glenn narrowed his eyes. Of course I am. Akes nodded. Suddenly, blood spikes erupted out from the floor as they pierced Glenn's foot. Flinching from the pain, Glenn stumbled back as he noticed thin streams of blood flowing through the tiles of the training hall. Right now, he was akin to a fly on a spider's web. It didn't matter where he went since he was walking on the web. Furrowing his brows, he ignored the pain on his foot and condensed his mana. Unleashing it in a single burst, he disappeared from his spot and appeared behind Akes. Cleaving down. With his blade, he watched as Akes's body was split in two. So that is your little gimmick. You condense mana and use it in a single burst. Akes's voice rang out as his body threaded itself back together. Snapping his head back 180 degrees, Akes smiled as blood spikes exploded out from the body. Ranobes widening his eyes, Glenn tried to block the strikes, but it still pierced parts of his body. Paralyzing blood! Akes' voice rang out as Glenn felt his body tense up. With Glenn unable to move his body, he watched as Akes's body collapsed into a pool of blood. From the corner, the real Akes revealed himself as he was currently wearing some light red armor. His hair was black with streaks of red. True spirit nature, blood Atrax flexing his fingers, all of the blood returned to him. A little surprising even on my end. Well done, Akes. Shiro smiled since she didn't think that he'd be able to retrain. Glenn so well. Thank you, Your Highness. He bowed slightly as he dispelled the effect on Glenn's body. Standing on his 2 feet, Glenn felt a little bitter, but understood that there was a rather big gap between the two of them. Right then. Celeste, I wanted you to fight against Sheena since you rely on your flames. I wanted you to see your own weakness so that you understand what you're weak against. As for you, Glenn, I wanted you to fight against Akes for the same reason. With the inability to use mana for magic, you must be careful with how you fight. If you could use magic, charging in and fighting is okay, but you cannot, so you have to keep that in mind. For someone like Akes, who uses tricks to corner his opponents. You need to be patient. Plus, he excels at close quarters, so you can get some tips from him," Shiro explained, healing everyone in the process. "Since all of you 5 have been taught by me personally, I expect you to help each other. It may be a little unfair to put you against your natural counters, but I wanted you to experience this kind of fight. For now, you 5 can talk to one another. I got other matters to deal with." Shiro smiled, teleporting away. Seeing this, Sheena sighed and walked over to Celeste. "Sorry about that. Are you feeling okay now?" Sheena asked with a small smile, as Celeste pouted for a moment before nodding her head. "I'll give you a little secret, though. These 2 don't force me to use my true spirit nature even when they're fighting me seriously. So in that regard, you're better than them." Sheena smiled while pointing at Akes and Oren. "She's telling the truth. We can't hit her at all." Oren sighed and shrugged his shoulder. Shaking his head, Akes looked at Glenn. "Are you unhappy about the outcome?" Akes asked as Glenn nodded. "I'm just annoyed that I can't use any spells. If only I could use spells. Maybe I could have done better," Glenn replied while looking at his sword. "Life is often unfair. My magic used to make me pass out from just making a sword. Hell, if I don't prepare properly, I can't even make a sword without passing out in a fight. That's why I have all of these blood bags prepared." Akes smiled. Pulling open his coat, he revealed several vials of blood. These vials had enchantments carved at the base which made them act similar to storage bags, so that he could store quite a bit of blood in them. "I had to study under one of Miss Erim's subordinates to learn how to make these with enchantments. Every day I'll go over to the Healers Guild and constantly pour blood in this while getting healed, so that I can be ready for combat at any moment," Akes explained while opening one of the vials. Tipping it upside down, blood started to pour, endlessly as Glenn watched in shock. During the fight, Akes was quite sparing with how much blood he used, when one vial could easily cover the entire floor. You never know what might happen, so you have to be sparing with your resources, especially for you. Though, had you been against Oren, you would have easily destroyed his defenses. Akes grinned as Oren furrowed his brows. "Bullshit! Just because you can't defeat me and Sheena doesn't mean you can slander me like this." Oren huffed. "I'm not slandering you. His offense is impressive, so he'll be effective against people like you. But against me and Sheena, he has to play the waiting game and be patient." Akes shrugged. "It is true. If it makes you feel better, Akes is in the same situation against me. Even if he uses his blood, I'll just freeze it." Sheena shrugged. Since she didn't even need to use her true spirit nature against Akes, then what can I do? I can only condense mana in my body and release it in a moment. "Anyone can do that?" Glenn asked. "We'll figure that out as a group. If you are only good at one thing, then hone that skill," Sheena encouraged as Akes and Oran nodded their heads. Seeing the 5 talk to one another, Shiro smiled, since it seemed like they'll work nicely as a party. While Glenn may seem like a fighter, it was better to call him an assassin with the skills that he's been born with. After a certain period of time, Shiro was planning on sending him to be trained under Chen Yu, while Celeste will study under Madison. However, that was something to think about in the future. Making their way to the marked location on the map, Shiro made sure that the city was roughly a day's travel away before keeping it hidden deep in a valley. There were quite a few high-level monsters roaming around, but they were dealt with easily, since none of them were Tier 6. Standing above the city, Shiro narrowed her eyes, since past this point would be Frost Giant's Pass. Shiro could already see the 2 large mountains in the far distance, and that was where the relic will appear. From this distance, the twin peaks looked like toothpicks, but she knew that their true height was much larger, and most of it was being blocked by the clouds. Their main goal today was to just set down some drones so that they could scout around the area, while also interacting with a few queens. Shiro was planning to use a nanotech avatar of sorts to roam around, since she didn't know what might happen if she faced a queen in person. She was heavily injured by the Ghost Queen's subordinate after all. Even with her stats, she was akin to a glass cannon. Ironically, this glass cannon could also break itself, since a fusion of all her abilities would definitely shatter her body to pieces. Flexing her fingers, Nanobots appeared next to her as it transformed to look exactly like her. Even the mana signature was the same, so it would be quite difficult for someone to realize who it was. That should be fine. Shiro smiled before returning back to her room. Remotely controlling the avatar, she stretched her body a little and nodded in appreciation. This isn't that bad. I'd say it has around 30, maybe 40% of my strength. Shiro mused to herself. It wasn't the best, but it was okay for now. Her main goal was to scout around a bit to see which queens are around. Making her way towards the Twin Peaks, Shiro made sure that she sent her senses out like a radar. It didn't matter if others sensed her avatar, since it was just an avatar. Like a light in the dark, her presence attracted the attention of several monsters guarding this place. Most of them were Tier 5, so Shiro didn't bother with them that much. There were one or two that reached the realm of Tier 6, but once they realized that she was just an avatar, they lost interest and let her do whatever she wanted without interfering. While Shiro wasn't afraid of fighting them, there was no benefit to doing that at this moment in time, so she was grateful for the fact that they ignored her. Traveling for roughly 3 to 4 hours, Shiro was a little disappointed that she couldn't find anyone, but wasn't the worst situation. Considering the fact that there was still a few days before the relic appeared, most queens might not even participate, considering the fact that more powerful queens are likely to show themselves. If they left their territory with very little chance of success, they're risking way too much. If someone decided to attack while they're out, they could just be eliminated immediately. So it's not an exaggeration to think that the ones attending this fight for the relic will be the more powerful queens, maybe even the empresses. Knowing the allure of the rainbow-grade relic, Shiro had no doubt that 1 or 2 empresses will show themselves in a few days' time. There's a pretty good chance that one of them is the Chimera Empress as well as the Dragon Empress. Shiro thought to herself as she noticed a small spike in mana roughly 30 minutes away from her current location. Since she hasn't been here for a long time, she wasn't sure if this was normal or not, but she was inclined to investigate a little. Activating some of her recycled stealth skills, she made her way towards the source of that mana spike. Noticing that several monsters have also dashed over to investigate, Shiro hung back a little to make sure that she wasn't seen. Crouching on a tree branch, she narrowed her eyes and saw the monsters huddling around this one area. Activating analysis, she looked past them and noticed a few faint marks on the floor. Shiakinti. In a moment, she saw them. She recognized them to be marks left behind by a teleport circle. But this teleportation circle was a little amateurish. Most experienced teleport circles wouldn't leave behind such an obvious mark. Only those that weren't used to making the teleportation circle would make this mistake. Who teleported here? Shiro thought with a frown. Looking around, she couldn't find any tracks that might show where the person had gone, which meant that they were experienced to some degree. Strange. Shiro furrowed her brows before creating a small drone. Sending it over to where the spike in mana happened, she recorded a signal. Frowning slightly, Shiro couldn't find a single trace of the signal. It was as if they didn't exist at all. Standing up, Shiro decided to walk around for a bit longer. If she couldn't find a signal, it meant that the person was a good assassin or they're proficient in hiding their signal. Regardless, she wasn't too keen on standing around to find out who it was. Turning around, she was about to dash away when she realized that there was a person sitting on a branch not too far behind her. Hello? Seems like you're the one who was trying to track my signal, huh? I wonder what kind of queen you are. They smiled as Shiro narrowed her eyes. They had short midnight blue hair and a pair of ruby eyes. Their clothes were quite rough and dirtied. Shiro couldn't tell which gender the person was, but there was a sinking feeling in her heart. Like she was in the middle of a mud pool that made it hard to move or breathe. Why aren't you speaking? Oh, is it because of the monsters around here? Don't worry, I've already eliminated our existence from their perception. Even if we were to cut their arms off, they'll think it's normal. Though only queens are somewhat resistant to this effect, hence why you even have the chance to track me. So tell me, what kind of queen are you? They narrowed their eyes as Shiro frowned. Since she couldn't see the system, Shiro couldn't see any details on this person. What context are we talking about? Are we talking about good or bad? Are we talking about the powers we use? Because if it's the latter, I'm afraid I can't tell you anything. Shiro frowned. Oh, that's fine, ahaha. I just want to know if you're on the side of humans or not. I also want to know if you're allied with the Beast Queen, the person asked, as Shiro noticed a dark aura flickering from their body. It was one that seemed to taint the surrounding area as it immediately became hard to breathe. I'm not solely on the side of humans, but if I see good people, I will help them. As for the second question, I suppose you can say that we're enemies. Shiro replied. All true. That's good. I haven't seen many queens that told me they're on the side of humans yet. In that case, then let me introduce myself. The person grinned as they stood up. Amiya. I'm a queen hunter. Amiya introduced herself as Shiro raised her eyebrow. Queen hunter? You hunt queens? Shiro asked curiously. Well, only those that hold malicious intent towards humans. Since you're not an enemy to humans, I won't bother you anymore. You might want to hang back a little when the relic appears, though, since other fallen will be here to cull the numbers a little. Amiya smiled darkly, as her figure immediately disappeared. Realizing that Amiya must have eliminated her presence, Shiro frowned, since powerhouses are becoming more common now that the new age has arrived. However, what concerned her was the fact that Amiya had mentioned the fact that other fallen will be there to cull the numbers. Considering her aura, powers, and the fact that she mentioned fallen people so casually, I can assume that she's a fallen. Seems like fallen are granted a class by the system, and her class is Queen Hunter. Shiro thought with a frown. Considering her power, Shiro assumed that Amiya was probably an assassin. With how confident she sounded, she either didn't know a queen's strength or she knew and it didn't bother her. Sitting in the same spot for a moment, Shiro closed her eyes. Opening them again, she started to make her way back to the city. She was going to end the scouting for today and share the information first, since they now know Fallen will also be participating in this fight. Plus, she now also found out that the system potentially gave Fallen people the same information they give to queens. Since this relic was only told to Madison and Acelia, while others didn't know anything. So Fallen are involved in this, with one called Queen Hunter no less. Since she specifically mentioned the Beast Queen, do you think her target for falling is the Beast Queen? Madison asked with a frown as everyone sat around the command room. It's not guaranteed, but the chances are high. If someone with her skill set completes her objective and becomes a mindless monster that does nothing but rampage, killing everything she sees, it's going to be annoying. She was even able to eliminate herself from my perception, so killing her would be no easy task. While the system may cause them to become mindless beasts, there's no guarantee that they won't be battle smart. They might retain the knowledge on how to use their skills effectively in combat with the prior experience. Shiro nodded her head with a frown. Having an unstable factor like Amiya in the following fight was going to be quite troublesome if they can't deal with her, since you never know if she's beside you or not. Honestly, I don't know if it's better for the queens to die or for the fallen to die. Acelia sighed, since it was picking the lesser of two evils. Only both evils were just as bad. Well, do you think we can team up with the fallen in some way? Even if the others don't join, just having Amiya on the team would be a great help, Sylvia asked. Perhaps. We don't know the goal of the other fallen, so it's a bit risky. Honestly, I might have been lucky that Amiya was hostile against queens that are enemies of humanity and had something similar to a lie detector. If she didn't, she might have just assassinated me if I was there personally. Shiro sighed. She had her avatar scout out the area before destroying itself, since she didn't want to risk having Amiya find out where Asteria was. Is there a way to find her again? You managed to find her this time because you tried to look for her and she responded. Right? Hellion asked. Maybe. I can begin development on a skill that'll broadcast a message to those specified using the unique mana signal. Shiro shrugged, since she didn't mind using some time to make a new skill. That might be the best call for now, since we don't know anything about the Fallen, other than the fact that the system creates them. They'll do anything to reach their goal, and that they'll become mindless monsters once that goal is reached. Arim frowned. Do you think there are potentially queens that we can make an alliance with for now? While this is primarily for the relic, we can't forget that it's a gathering of queens. It's a good chance to see others and make alliances. I know that we have to be the final victor, but it's still good to get some allies. Even if they'll become enemies later down the line, Isilia suggested. I know, I've got one candidate in mind that I saw in the future, but I'm not sure if she'll be participating in this battle. I'm guessing that she might be a little too busy taking care of her own city, so there's a slim chance that we'll even see her here. Shiro nodded her head and leaned back slightly. Remembering the black-haired girl that created cities of undead to reunite people with one another, Shiro didn't mind making an alliance with her since it looked as though she cared more for the future than the past. Oh, who's this that you're thinking about? Lyrica asked curiously. The undead Queen Misu, Shiro answered. We're here, Your Highness. We're not sure how many queens are nearby, but for now, I believe we should keep a low profile. Our goal is not the relic after all. A man bowed as a black-haired woman walked out of the portal and looked at the two large mountains in the distance, with a smile. That's fine. We don't know her that well, but I think with her personality that she demonstrated in the recordings, she wouldn't let something like this fall into the wrong hands. She'll either destroy it or take it for herself. The girl smiled as her emerald eyes flickered at the memory of the queen she saw on the video. Perhaps. But I think we shouldn't be hasty. Maybe we should just observe for now. If we reveal ourselves too soon, we might make ourselves a target. The man frowned. Oh, it's fine. It's not like I'll be fighting. Just spectating, okay? Spectating. The girl laughed. Sighing softly, the man shook his head and made sure the perimeters were clear. We'll be leaving after we watch for a bit. The city still needs some adjustments to house everyone after all. She smiled while looking around for a place that's far enough from the battle, but close enough so that she could watch everything. That happened. We're already making some preparations to hunt down the demonic Kraken husk. Once you return from this expedition, we'll be ready to launch an offensive. Once the Kraken is slain, the surrounding area should begin healing, and we'll be able to use it as farmland in the future. That's good. Octopuses should stay in the ocean after all. No point them being on land. The girl giggled softly while jumping up on the tree. To call a level 750 demonic Kraken an octopus? The man muttered with a tired look on his face as if he had heard this kind of thing often. Sighing heavily, he massaged his eyes before following behind her. Wow. Such a beautiful place. It's a shame that everything will be gone in a few days, huh? She sighed, seeing the white trees stretch as far as the eyes could see. Ranub. Indeed. But that's just the nature of fights between Tier 6 beings. If the world didn't change, it'll be more than just a forest that disappears. Vali, man narrowed his eyes, remembering what had happened before, but quickly dispelled the thoughts. That's true. Say, what do you think is the final goal of all this? We've already lived through the New Age several times now. Each time a new one begins, our levels reset back to when the New Age began in our old world. The system probably removed our memories since I can't remember what happened near the end. But I've been through this starting process a few times now. I know I wasn't close to winning, but still. The girl narrowed her eyes. The system keeps lots of things from us. We just have to keep looking forward and help those that need our help, even if we don't win in the end. Isn't that what you vowed to do when you met me? The man smiled softly. Oh, of course. I got this power because I wanted to help them after all. They were unfairly dragged into all of this. But I really, and I mean really, want to see them tomorrow when the New Age ends. The girl smiled happily as the man nodded. I hope so too. I have a good feeling about this New Age. Plus, you're more energetic than before. Am I? I don't feel any different, though. The girl raised an eyebrow. Maybe it's because you found a queen who is willing to help people out as you do. That's true. Let's hope this is the last New Age we have to experience, okay? Hearing this, the man nodded his head. I'll do everything I can so that you can see tomorrow when the New Age ends and the loop breaks. Is this the right spot? I asked, feeling exhausted. After travelling non-stop on the back of Nitha with Edvimar, we managed to arrive at a strange forest of snow that had 2 large mountains in the distance. Our bodies were fatigued since Edvimar brought us through what he calls the tears in the void and cut the journey short. They acted as small teleport gates, with the end being random, but he seemed to be able to control it to some extent. Maybe that's why he was able to escape from the person he called the Watchman. He hasn't said anything more, but from what he's shown us on the way here, I can guess that his enemy was someone on the level of the Queen's. Maybe even higher. Yes, this should be the Frost Giant's Pass. I'm not sure if they'll be here. Honestly, you can leave now since this place will be filled with queens soon. Staying here is tantamount to suicide. Edvimar replied, staring into my eyes as I thought about Edwim. I knew their power, considering the destruction caused by a single dragon that showed itself a while back. However, I wasn't about to let someone injured like him look for his wife alone with danger all around him. Don't worry about it. We'll watch. From afar. It's not like you'll be fighting the queens, will you? We'll keep an eye out, and if we find your wife, we'll see if we can get to her, okay? I replied. The rest of the party was happy with this decision and showed their support. Hearing the support, Edvimar chuckled and nodded his head. Okay, let's fly low for now since a few queens might already be here. I don't want to be killed before seeing my wife. Scouting the pass for a few days, Shiro managed to spot a few tracks of people here and there, but the tracks always ended in a dead end. However, with the tracks that she's seen, she could guess that there were more than 15 groups in this area now. That's concerning. Shiro thought to herself, as the time for the relic to appear was getting closer with each day. She had also noticed the mana in the area increase in density, which is a phenomenon that may happen when a treasure appears. Looking at the Twin Peaks, Shiro narrowed her eyes, as she had a somewhat risky idea in her mind. Shiro, if you do that, there's no doubt that someone will see you. Nimue warned. She knew what Shiro was thinking, and it was not a good idea. Oh, don't be like that, I'm sure. It'll be fine. Shiro smiled. What if they track your avatar back to you? If you can track people using their mana, they can do the same. And with you being injured, none of us are keen to fight them, Nimue reminded. That's true, let's see, just a little peek. Shiro grinned. Crouching down, Shiro dashed towards the mountain peak as Nimue was speechless. Why do I even bother? She sighed. Walking to her side, Ati patted her head. Making her way towards the mountain peaks, Shiro made her way through the forest, nimbly, as she vaulted past the large branches that collapsed on the side. As she was running through the snow, Forest! Shiro noticed a few white-scaled serpents intercept her, despite the fact she was using her stealth skills. Tch, something similar to true sight then, huh? Shiro muttered. Narrowing her eyes, 2 swords appeared as Shiro leapt into the sky. Twisting her body, she grinned as she activated Boundary and slashed towards the serpent as lightning flickered from her blades. Cutting the serpent into hundreds of pieces in a single moment, Shiro was about to continue when she realized that all of the pieces started to turn into miniature snakes. Ooh, that's quite an annoying ability. Shiro narrowed her eyes. Sliding on the ground for a moment, she stomped down and slammed her hand down. A wave of nanotech wires stretched out from her hand as spikes shot up, piercing all of the snakes. Noticing the defense seemed to drop, Shiro smiled, despite the snakes multiplying once more. Standing up straight, a green fire roared out on the edge of her blade as she stabbed down. Suddenly the wires burst into flames, as the snakes were burnt to ashes. With their defenses decreasing, killing them became much easier. Glancing behind her, Shiro smiled at the horde of monsters that was forming from the snow. Men. I see. So most of you are golems rather than monsters, Shiro muttered. Cracking her neck, she dismissed her swords as wires extended from her fingertips. Before the golems could even attack her, she pulled back on the wires as they were all cut into tiny pieces. After all, Boundary was not limited to her blades. If she wanted, she could easily accomplish the same concept with her wires. Eliminating the group of golems, she made her way towards the mountains. Just as she stepped past the forest, Shiro noticed a small flash of light, and her control over her avatar was weakened. Stumbling slightly, Shiro frowned. Seems like the further in we go, the harder it is to control this body. Shiro frowned while looking down at her hand. Perhaps we should leave it here for now, then. I suspect that if we go any further, we'll get found out. And with your control weakening, are you sure you're able to destroy this avatar before they track it back to you? Nimue asked, as Shiro scratched her head. Ranobtash true. Let me, huh? Pausing for a moment, Shiro widened her eyes in surprise as her avatar had already begun corroding away. She had never seen her tech being corroded away before since it innately had a corrosion resistance. For it to begin corroding, it meant that whatever was causing this couldn't be underestimated. Bringing her avatar out of the area and back into the forest, Shiro had a serious expression on her face. Something in here possesses a large, corrosive aura. Seems like we won't be able to enter for the time being. Unless this aura disappears when the relic appears, collecting said relic will be quite difficult. Shiro frowned, especially since your nanotech is tier 7 in rating. This is something that can even damage demigods. Nimue narrowed her eyes. Indeed. That's what I'm most concerned about. Shiro nodded as she looked down. Had she stayed for another minute, her limbs would have completely corroded away. Setting down a teleport node at the edge of the forest, just before the corroding aura, Shiro destroyed the avatar. After the encounter with the corrosion field, Shiro did try to return a few more. Times to see how far she'd go, but she couldn't travel in the aura for more than 2 minutes, even with all the preparation she had done. She did wonder if it was targeted at machines specifically, so she grabbed some monster flesh, but it was corroded, almost immediately. Marking this spot down as a kill zone, for now, Shiro scanned out a detailed map of the entire Frost Giant's Pass. In addition to this, she had also decided to move the city a little further away, just to be safe. She had a nagging feeling in her heart that they'll definitely be caught in a crossfire from where they stood. Her instincts were normally on point, so she moved it a few hours away, just to be safe. Right now, she was resuming training on Glenn and Celeste, since she wanted to have them train under Chen Yu and Madison soon. Casually stepping to the side, she avoided their attacks with ease and instructed them on a few tips. With half of her attention on this, the other half was focused on developing a skill to help her contact Amiya, and so far, it was pretty successful. The ones hearing this broadcast would only hear random sounds, while the one targeted by this broadcast would hear the decrypted message. Shiro wasn't sure about how easy it was to decipher this skill, hence the extensive testing, but so far it was proving to be rather effective. Taking a break from the training, Shiro returned to the command office and sat down with a heavy sigh. After all the things she's done in the past few days, she was feeling tired again and planned to have a long night's rest tonight. Just as she was about to leave for her room after finishing the paperwork in her office, she received a call and couldn't help but sigh heavily. Looking at the caller, she quickly sat up since it was Nan Tian. Honestly, I think I may have called at the wrong time considering how you look right now. Are you sure you're resting properly? Nan Tian raised an eyebrow. A little, but that's fine. I'm planning to sleep in a bit. Shiro smiled. All right, I'll keep it short then. I've found a few clues that might take us to the Queen's main city. However, we've also received news that her guards are rather high-leveled, even for you and me. Also, you might want to be careful since she should be at Frost Giant's Peak now. Even though she's made quite a few anchors, you might want to be careful. She is ridiculously confident for someone that should be weakened. Nan Tian frowned. I'll keep that in mind. Shiro nodded with a smile. Don't worry, though. I won't be actively fighting everyone here. I'm a bit injured after all. Shiro sighed as Nan Tian paused, since he didn't know about this. You're injured? He asked with a raised eyebrow. Sigh. Yes, I am. Shiro sighed, realizing she slipped up. She forgot that she had hidden. This from Nan Tian. How serious is the damage? Nan Tian asked as he stood up. It's not that bad. It's quite bad. Her soul is damaged. A third of it is missing. She is forced to pass out if she stays up for too long. She can't see anymore, nor can she feel anything through touch. The only reason why she's even half-functional right now is because she's using cameras to see for her and wires to control her body like a puppet. Nimue appeared and told Nantian everything. Looking back at Nimue, Shiro face-palmed since she could see that Nantian was not happy. I see. All right. I'll have my subordinates watch over the situation for me. I'm teleporting. I'm back now. Nantian nodded as he ended the call. Sitting there in silence, Shiro looked at Nimue, who only shrugged. Don't look at me, you're the one overworking yourself. Have fun with someone looking after you. Nimue smirked as she disappeared. Before Shiro could shout at Nimue, the door opened, revealing Nantian standing there with his arms crossed. Without saying anything, Nantian smiled threateningly and pulled out the dreaded pink wheelchair. Seeing the wheelchair and Nantian's expression, which clearly showed that he wasn't going to take a no for an answer, Shiro coughed awkwardly on her comfy chair and shrunk back slightly. Can we talk about this? She asked with a forced smile. We could have talked about this if I had known of this sooner, but considering the fact that you look so pale and worn out now, I don't think talking is on the table anymore. Nantian smiled, patted the wheelchair. Well, you see, I had to train some new recruits, and the relic was appearing soon, so I couldn't rest often. Shiro replied, glancing around the room for something that she could use. I wonder how you trained the recruits. Surely it's not your usual training, right? Because if that was the case, then that meant you didn't get any sleep either. Nantian raised an eyebrow as Shiro dug her own grave. She did. She even passed out for 2 days as well. I had to take over for her during that time. Nimue appeared again as she disappeared immediately before Shiro could strangle her. Nimue! Shiro shouted out in her mind as the water spirit was just making things worse. How? 2 days, huh? Well, isn't that interesting? Don't you think so too? Nantian chuckled as he grabbed a chair and sat down in front of Shiro, while placing the wheelchair in front of her. It wasn't what I had planned. But Mum did say my soul was healing up, so I think I'll be fine soon, Shiro replied, avoiding eye contact. Is that so? Well, I'm interested in what Mrs. Asakura has to say about that. Maybe she might even give her own thoughts after I tell her about how you passed out for 2 days. Nantian smiled while pulled out his phone. Please don't. Let's just talk about this, okay? Shiro quickly snatched his phone away and forced a smile. How do you want to talk about this then? Because I see an overworked demigoddess who passed out for 2 days despite being tier 6. Have you heard of a queen passing out from overwork? Because I haven't. In fact, the beast queen seemed so lively I wonder if this sickly goddess in front of me is real or not. Nantian narrowed his eyes while resting his chin on his palm. Different context? Shiro replied. Oh, what kind of context are we talking about? Are we talking about the overloading your body with berserk skills? And almost killing yourself had it not been for your daughters, the sect, and a bit of luck? Or perhaps the context about how you pissed off basically an entire pantheon of gods? Or maybe it was when you appeared in front of the party being completely disabled in a wheelchair gifted by the gods no less. Since you like breaking your body so much, I wonder if our little demigoddess is secretly a masochist. Nantian chuckled as Shiro coughed, since she has been rather violent with her own body in the past year. Hell, in her first week she had completely ruined her arm for a while, and that was not fun at all. Can I choose the persuasion option? Shiro joked as Nantian nodded. Sure. Your persuasion better be on the level of convincing you not to kill Ikari. Nantian replied. What? Go on, I'm listening, I have all the time in the world. Nantian hummed lightly after seeing her stay silent. Well, maybe you'll let me off because you like me. Shiro muttered, while gripping the phone. Peeking at Nantian, she could see that he was smiling. Rango vase. Oh my, that's quite a good response. But that only persuaded me to shove you into this wheelchair personally. Because let's be honest, who likes seeing the person they like overwork themselves to death? Nantian said, while patting the seat on the chair. What if I apologize? Just get in the damn chair before I ask one of the gods to do it instead, since I can't force you. Nantian cut her off as he suddenly received a strange message. Gaia agrees. Break her legs and shove her in the chair. If you have to. The fuck? Nantian thought to himself, since that was a little violent to say the least. Sighing heavily, Shiro looked at the computer screen. What about the paperwork? I still have to plan for what to do when the relic appears. Glenn and Celeste still need their training. Shiro muttered as Nantian shook his head. I can deal with that. I have apparently received permission to force you into the chair by Gaia. Imagine having a primordial goddess call for your legs to be broken so that I can force you into the chair. Nantian mused as Shiro shouted out, traitor, in her mind, since she had thought that Gaia was on her side. Staying silent for a bit, Shiro sighed and nodded her head obediently. Fine, I'll get in the chair. Can it at least be a normal one? Shiro asked, since the wheelchair was still quite girly for her taste. I do have another one. I'm not sure if you want it, thought. Nantian raised an eyebrow. Before Shiro could even say yes, Nantian pulled it out, and it was a wheelchair with extension that made it seem like a unicorn. Looking at the glitter on the wheels and fluffy tail, Shiro could already feel rainbow puke building up. If you're curious as to why I have this, it's because I figured that you'll probably break your body sooner or later. If you don't want to have the pink one, you're welcome to choose this one. Nantian chuckled, since he could tell what she was thinking. Taking a deep breath in, Shiro grabbed the pink wheelchair. I'll take this one, thank you. That's what I thought. Nantian grinned as he stored away the unicorn wheelchair. It was a certain good blackmailing tool. Sitting down in the wheelchair, Shiro could already feel a sense of shame building up, but Nantian wasn't done. Undo the wires as well. Just relax your body. Pouting slightly, Shiro nodded her head as the silver wires started to unwrap from her body. With her being unable to feel her body through the wires, Shiro sighed softly. And the camera for eyes. Can you at least let me see while I'm in this? In wheelchair, it's bad enough that I'm here, and I can't feel my body at all. Shiro pouted with annoyance as Nantian chuckled and nodded his head. Fine, 2 cameras shouldn't be that bad. Wheeling her slightly to the side, he sat in front of the computers and started to tap away without saying anything, despite not saying anything. Shiro could tell that Nantian was a little annoyed inside. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro turned the wheelchair around and looked down at the peaceful city under the moonlight. There weren't many people walking around, but a few stores are still open for business. Hearing the rhythmic tapping of keyboards in the background, Shiro could tell that Nantian was doing all of her work with ease. Are you angry at me? Shiro asked curiously as Nantian paused for a moment before continuing. Not so much angry, but a little upset, I suppose. It sounded like everyone else knew about your injury, but I was left out. Nantian sighed. Well, it's not just you. Not everyone. In the party knows. I didn't want you lot to know unless it was necessary, since it might cause extra worry. Everyone has become so busy now that our roles have become bigger. Kind of makes me miss the days where we'd just go out and do dungeons together as a party. Shiro sighed. That's normal, but you know it's fine if you tell us about your injuries. It'll make us feel worse if we had to find out ourselves. Do you know how I felt when Nimue told me that you passed out for 2 days? Nantian asked, as Shiro turned around in her wheelchair so that only her eyes were showing, and shook her head. Felt like I had a heart attack. While I was searching for information, you were heavily injured. For all I know, you could be on your deathbed, and I'll still be looking for the capital city. Not knowing about this, Nantian looked up at Shiro, who was peeking over the wheelchair to look at him. Sorry. Shiro apologized, as she would feel the same if she found out that one of her friends was heavily injured, and they didn't tell her. Thinking about this, Shiro furrowed her brows, since right now Nantian was in the most danger, considering the fact that he was spying on a queen in their territory. It's fine, just be more careful please, and be honest when you get injured so that we can help you. Nantian shook his head before continuing to work. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro opened her mouth. In that case, then why don't you stay here for a bit, since I won't be able to work? She asked, sinking down in her chair to hide her blush. Hearing this, Nantian smiled. Sure,